Trust is the foundation of love, but sacrifice can test its limits. In this story, a soldier pours his heart into protecting his country and marriage, only to discover a betrayal that forces him to question everything he holds dear. My name's Ryan Mitchell. I'm 27, and I'm an Army mechanic based out of Fort Carson, Colorado. 3 years ago, I married Ashley, the woman I thought I'd build a life with. We don't have kids yet, but we had plans, a house, a family, the kind of future you dream about when you're young and in love. 9 months ago, I got deployed to the Middle East, and that's when my world started to unravel in ways I never saw coming. Ashley and I go way back to high school in a small Colorado town. I was the guy always tinkering with engines in shop class, hands smudged with grease. She was on the yearbook committee, always snapping photos with this big, warm smile that made you feel seen. We started dating junior year after I helped fix her dad's old pickup truck. She'd bring me lemonade while I worked, and we'd talk for hours about nothing and everything. After I enlisted right out of school, she stuck with me through boot camp and my first posting. When I proposed on a snowy hike in the Rockies, she tackled me into a snowbank, laughing and saying yes before I even finished the question. Our wedding was small, just family and a few Army buddies, in a little chapel near her parents' place. I can still see her walking down the aisle, her dress catching the sunlight, promising me forever. Deployment wasn't new to me, but this one hit different. As a mechanic, my job was keeping our Humvees and trucks running in the desert heat, making sure the guys could roll out safely. The days were grueling, 110 degrees, sand and everything, and the constant hum of danger. What got me through were Ashley's letters. They'd show up every few weeks, written on this creamy stationery she loved. With a faint whiff of her lavender perfume, she'd tell me about her shifts at the bookstore, how Buddy, our golden retriever, chewed her favorite shoes, and how she was marking days off a calendar until I came home. "I'm waiting for you, Ryan," she'd write at the end, no matter what. I'd trace those words with my finger at night, bunk light flickering, imagining her in our apartment, curled up with a book. Those letters were my lifeline, proof that what I was fighting for was real. I knew deployments could break couples. You hear it all the time. Guys getting dumped over email or finding out their girls moved on. But I never doubted Ashley. On our rare video calls, she'd tilt the screen to show Buddy snoring or hold up a new book she was reading, her voice soft and steady. "I'm so proud of you," she'd say, and I believed her. I was out there, sweating and risking my life, thinking I was building our future. In my downtime, I'd sketch floor plans for a house. Nothing big, just a place with a garage for me to tinker and a backyard for Buddy and maybe a kid someday. I'd fall asleep picturing it, Ashley's smile at the center of it all. We were supposed to be gone 9 months, but we got sent home early. I decided to surprise her. I wanted that movie moment reunion, her running into my arms, tears and all. My buddy Josh drove me from the base, joking about how Ashley was gonna freak. I was buzzing with excitement, picturing her face when I walked through the door. It was late afternoon when I got to our apartment. I let myself in quietly, expecting to find her reading or maybe napping with Buddy. The place was still, too still. Buddy didn't come bounding over like usual. Then I heard voices from our bedroom, hers and a man's. My heart stopped. I pushed the door open, and there they were, Ashley, in our bed, with some stranger. She screamed when she saw me, yanking the sheets up. The guy grabbed his jeans and shoved past me. Out the door, I just stood there, my duffel bag at my feet, the world I'd been fighting for crumbling around me. I stood frozen in the doorway, my duffel bag heavy in my hand, the bedroom air thick with Ashley's perfume and something else. Guilt. Maybe. Her scream still echoed in my head, and the sight of that guy scrambling out of our bed burned into my brain. Ashley was clutching the sheets to her chest, her eyes wide, like she was the one who'd been ambushed. "Ryan," she stammered, "you're back early." That's all she could say. 9 months of sand and sweat, dodging breakdowns in 120-degree heat. And she's surprised I'm home? I wanted to yell, to throw something, but my voice came out low, almost calm. Who was he? She started crying, big messy sobs, but I wasn't buying it. "It's not what it looks like," she said, which was such a cliche I almost laughed. I dropped my bag, the thud loud in the quiet apartment, and walked to the living room. Buddy, our golden retriever, was curled up on the couch, looking confused. I scratched his ears, trying to anchor myself, but my hands were shaking. Ashley followed, still wrapped in the sheet, babbling apologies. I was lonely. Ryan, you were gone so long, and I didn't know how to handle it. Lonely. The word hit like a punch. I'd been lonely too, out there with nothing but her letters to keep me sane, but I didn't go running to someone else's bed. I sat on the couch, staring at the coffee table where her last letter sat, unopened. I'd been saving it for tonight, thinking it'd be special to read it with her. Now it felt like a lie in paper form. How long? I asked, my voice still steady, though my chest was caving in. She hesitated, then whispered, for months. 4 months, half my deployment, she'd been with this guy. Some random dude in our home, our bed, while I was fixing trucks to keep my squad alive. I pressed her for details, not because I wanted them, but because I needed to know how deep the knife went. His name was Derek, a co-worker from the bookstore. They'd started as friends, she said, grabbing coffee after shifts. Then it turned into more. She swore it wasn't planned. Like that made it better. I kept picturing her letters. All those "I'm waiting for you" promises. Were they lies even then? I asked, and she looked away, wiping her tears. I meant them at the time, she said. At the time, I wanted to scream that I'd been faithful, that I'd carried her picture in my pocket through every patrol, that I'd dreamed of her face to drown out the sound of distant explosions. But all I said was, "Get out." She blinked, like she hadn't heard me. "Ryan, please, we can talk about this." I pointed to the door. "Go now." She begged, saying she loved me, that she'd made a mistake, but I couldn't even look at her. She grabbed some clothes and left, sobbing, promising she'd call tomorrow. The apartment felt too big after she was gone. Buddy nudged my hand, whining, and I realized I hadn't eaten since the plane. I tried to make a sandwich, but my hands wouldn't work right. I kept seeing them, Ashley and Derek. Every time I closed my eyes, I called Josh, the buddy who'd driven me home. He was at my place in 20 minutes, no questions asked. We sat on the porch with beers, and I told him everything. He didn't say much, just listened. But that was enough. "You don't deserve this." "Man," he said finally, "nobody does." I nodded, but I didn't believe it. Part of me wondered if I'd failed her somehow, been gone too long, not called enough. Wasn't that what she meant by lonely? I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about the life we'd planned. Kids, a house, growing old together. I'd been out there, risking everything, thinking I was protecting that dream. But while I was dodging breakdowns in the desert, she was building a whole other life without me. I pulled out her letters, spread them across the table, and read them again. Every "I love you" felt like a betrayal now. Every "I'm waiting" a mockery. I wanted to burn them, but I couldn't. They were all I had left of the Ashley I thought I knew. By dawn, I was staring at our wedding photo on the wall, wondering how I'd missed the signs. Had there been any? Or was I just blind, trusting her because I needed to believe in something good? The morning after the diner, I woke up on the couch with Buddy's head heavy on my lap, his soft snores the only sound in the apartment. Ashley's lavender perfume still lingered, mixing with the stale air of a place that didn't feel like home anymore. My phone was lit up with her texts, apologies, excuses, pleased to talk. "Ryan, I'm so sorry." One read, "Please, let's fix this." I stared at the words, my thumb itching to block her, but something stopped me. I wasn't ready to cut her off completely, not because I wanted her back, but because I needed to understand how we'd gotten here. How could the woman I'd married, the one who'd promised forever, do this? Josh, my buddy who'd stayed over, was in the kitchen making coffee. He'd seen me at my lowest last night, spilling my guts on the porch over beers. He suggested meeting Ashley to get answers, said it'd help me move on. "You'll go crazy without closure," he told me. And he was right. So I'd met her at that diner, the one we used to hit for pancakes after late-night drives. But talking to her only made it worse. Her excuses, loneliness, Derek being just a friend, at first felt like salt in a wound. I'd left her crying in that booth. And now, back in the apartment, I was drowning in questions I didn't want to ask. I texted her to stay away for now. I needed space. and having her in my face wasn't helping. Then I started packing her stuff, her books, her clothes, that damn lavender perfume bottle on the dresser. I shoved it all into boxes. It wasn't about being petty. I just couldn't stand the reminders. Buddy followed me from room to room, whining like he knew something was wrong. I gave him a treat to calm him down, but my hands were shaking as I taped up the first box. Every item felt like a piece of our life together, and I kept wondering when it stopped being real for her. Was it the first letter she sent? The third? Had she been with Derek while she was writing, "I'm waiting for you"? I needed to get out of my head, so I called my sergeant, Martinez, who'd been through a divorce a few years back. He told me to swing by the base, no pressure, just to talk. When I got there, we sat in his office. A cramped space with engine manuals stacked on the desk. Martinez didn't sugarcoat things. Betrayal like that, it's a gut punch, he said. You're gonna feel it for a while, but you'll come out stronger. He gave me the number for a therapist the VA worked with, someone who dealt with PTSD and family issues. I wasn't sold on therapy, felt like something for other people, but I took the card. He also told me to lean on my squad. You're not alone. Mitchell, he said, don't try to be. I called my parents next. They live a few hours away in a small town near Denver. Mom cried when I told her what happened, her voice breaking over the phone. Come home, Ryan, she said. Dad was quieter, just said, you're welcome here anytime, son. I wasn't ready to leave Fort Carson. The base was my routine, my anchor, but knowing I had a fallback meant a lot. The hardest part was admitting I'd been blind. I trusted Ashley completely, believed every word of her letters, every smile on our video calls. I kept replaying our last call, her holding up a book she was reading, laughing about Buddy stealing her socks. How had I missed the lie? Or was I just so desperate for something good to hold on to that I ignored the cracks? By evening, I was back at the apartment, staring at the boxes I'd packed. I didn't know where to send them. Her parents' place, maybe? I didn't even know if she was staying with them or with Derek. That thought made my stomach twist. I opened one of her letters, the one from a month ago, and read it again. I miss you every day, Ryan, she'd written. I wanted to tear it up, but I couldn't. Instead, I stuffed it back in the envelope and shoved it into a drawer. Josh came by again, bringing takeout, and we ate in silence. Buddy begging for fries? You gonna be okay? He asked. I shrugged. Don't have a choice, do I? But deep down, I wasn't sure. The life I'd been fighting for was gone, and I didn't know how to start over. The days after packing Ashley's stuff were like moving through fog. I went back to work on the base, wrenching on Humvees, because the rhythm of tools and engines was the only thing that felt solid. My squad noticed I was off, quieter, distracted. But they didn't push. Josh must have tipped them off, because they started pulling me into their routines. Poker nights, beers after shifts, even a pickup basketball game I was terrible at. Carter, a guy from my unit, offered his couch if I needed to. Crash somewhere else. I thanked him, but stayed in the apartment. It was mine, ours, and leaving felt like letting Ashley win. But every corner of that place, our couch, the kitchen table, our bed, held ghosts of her betrayal. Ashley's texts kept coming, long walls of words about how sorry she was, how she'd do anything to fix us. I didn't reply. What could I say? I trusted her with everything, carried her letters like a lifeline through the desert, and she'd been with Derek for half my deployment. The thought of her with him, in our home, made my skin crawl. I started looking up divorce lawyers online, clicking through websites with names like Compassionate Family Law. The word divorce felt heavy, like admitting I'd lost something I'd fought for. I'd survived 9 months of sand and stress, thinking I was protecting our future, only to come home to this. But staying with her? I couldn't imagine it. Every time I pictured her face, I saw her with him. I made an appointment with Dr. Ellis, the therapist Martinez recommended. I wasn't sure about talking to a stranger, but my head was a mess, anger, guilt, and this weird shame, like I'd failed her by being gone. Dr. Ellis was ex-Army, older, with a no-nonsense vibe that put me at ease. In our first session, I spilled it all. Finding Ashley with Derek, her excuses at the diner, the letters that felt like lies now. He asked how it made me feel, and I fumbled for words. Betrayed, obviously, angry, but also lost, like the ground under me had vanished. He didn't push, just nodded and said, "You've been through a war, Ryan, and not just overseas. Give yourself time." I left feeling raw but lighter, like I dropped a weight I didn't know I was carrying. Back at the apartment, I kept finding pieces of Ashley, a hairpin under the couch, a grocery list in her handwriting. I threw them out, but it didn't erase her. Buddy sensed something was wrong, sticking close, his head on my knee when I sat down. I started taking him on long walks just to get out. One night, I ran into a neighbor, Mrs. Carter, an older lady who'd always liked Ashley. She asked where she was, and I mumbled something about her visiting family. I couldn't say the truth, it felt too personal, too humiliating, but word was spreading. Josh said someone saw Ashley at the bookstore with Derek, looking cozy. That stung worse than I expected. Was she just moving on, like I'd been a placeholder? I called my parents again, needing their voices. Mom wanted me to come home for a weekend, said she'd make my favorite pot roast. Dad told me to focus on myself, not Ashley. You're stronger than this, he said, and I wanted to believe him. I started journaling. Something Dr. Ellis suggested, scribbling down thoughts at night when I couldn't sleep. I wrote about the deployment, fixing trucks under fire, the fear I never admitted, the hope Ashley's letters gave me. I wrote about finding her with Derek, how it felt like my heart was ripped out. It helped a little. I also started researching the divorce process, what it had cost, what I'd need to do. It felt final, like closing a book I'd spent years writing. But every time I thought about signing those papers, I saw our wedding day, her smile, my vows, the life we'd promised each other. How had it come to this? I didn't have answers, but I knew I couldn't go back. The man who'd left for deployment was gone, and I was figuring out who I was now, one painful day at a time. A week later, I was still living in a haze, splitting my time between the base, therapy, and long walks with Buddy. Work was my escape. Bolts and engines don't lie or cheat. My squad kept me busy, dragging me to the gym or the mess hall, making sure I wasn't stewing alone. They didn't talk about Ashley, but I could tell they were watching out for me. One night, Carter clapped me on the shoulder and said, "You're tougher than this, Mitchell. You'll get through." I nodded, but I wasn't so sure. The anger was still there, burning low, but now it was mixed with this heavy sadness, like I was mourning someone who wasn't dead. Ashley's text slowed down, but she called once, leaving a voicemail I couldn't bring myself to delete. "Ryan, I know I messed up." Her voice cracked. "I love you. Please talk to me." I listened to it 3 times, then shoved my phone in a drawer. Love? She didn't get to say that anymore. I kept picturing her with Derek, wondering if she was still seeing him, if she'd been with him when she wrote those letters. The questions ate at me, but I didn't want to ask her. I didn't trust her answers, and I wasn't sure I could handle them. Dr. Ellis helped me unpack some of it in our next session. I told him about the voicemail, how it made me want to punch a wall but also miss her, which felt like a betrayal of myself. He said it was normal to grieve the relationship, even after what she did. "You loved her, Ryan," he said. "That doesn't just switch off." He asked about my deployment, how I'd coped out there. I told him about the long nights, the heat, the way Ashley's letters were my anchor. He nodded, scribbling something, then asked if I felt I'd been enough for her. That question hit hard. Had I? I'd been gone, sure, but I was doing my job, serving my country. Wasn't that enough? I started digging into the divorce process more seriously. I found a lawyer, a guy named Tom who specialized in military cases. He was straightforward, explaining how we'd split assets since we had no kids. The apartment lease was in my name, so I'd keep it, but we'd need to sort out savings and debts. It felt so cold, reducing our marriage to paperwork. I kept thinking about our wedding, how we danced to some cheesy country song, her laughing as I spun her. Now I was meeting with a lawyer, trying to erase her from my life. Tom asked if I wanted to try mediation, but I shook my head. Ashley's loneliness excuse didn't change the fact that she'd chosen Derek over me. I leaned on my squad more than I expected. Josh and Carter became my lifelines, checking in daily, dragging me to a dive bar one weekend where we shot pool and pretended everything was normal. But it wasn't. A guy from another unit, Ramirez, shared his own story. His ex had cheated while he was deployed too. "It's not about you, man," he said. "Some people can't handle the distance." It helped, hearing that, but it didn't erase the sting. I started opening up in therapy about the deployment itself, the stress, the close calls, the guilt I felt for not being there for Ashley. Dr. Ellis said I might have some PTSD. Not just from combat, but from the betrayal. It made sense. I'd wake up at night, heart racing, picturing that bedroom scene. Back home, I rearranged the apartment, moving furniture to make it feel less like ours. I put Ashley's boxes in a storage unit, not ready to deal with where she'd go. Mrs. Carter, the neighbor, asked about her again, and I finally told her we'd split. She hugged me, said I deserved better. I wasn't sure I believed her, but it felt good to hear. I started running with Buddy every morning, the cold Colorado air clearing my head. I wasn't okay, not even close, but I was moving. Journaling helped. 2 pages of anger, hurt, and questions I'd never ask Ashley. I wrote about the future I'd lost, the kids we'd never have, the house we'd never buy, but slowly, I started writing about what I wanted next, even if I couldn't see it clearly yet. 2 weeks after finding Ashley with Derek, I was starting to feel like I could breathe again, but it was a fragile kind of progress. The apartment was mine now, at least in my head. New couch arrangement, her stuff gone to storage. No more lavender scent haunting me, but the emptiness was loud. I'd catch myself staring at the spot where our wedding photo used to hang, now just a blank wall. But he kept me company, his goofy grin a reminder that not everything was broken. Work on the base was steady, and my squad support was unwavering. Josh and Carter took turns making sure I wasn't alone too much, inviting me to barbecues or movie nights with their families. It helped, but it also reminded me of what I'd lost: a partner, a future. Ashley reached out again, this time with an email. No texts or calls, just a long, carefully worded message. She apologized again, said she was staying with a friend, not Derek, and wanted to meet to talk about us. She said she'd started therapy, was trying to understand why she'd done it. Part of me wanted to delete it, but another part, the part that still remembered her laugh, our late-night talks, wanted to know if she was telling the truth. I didn't respond, but I saved the email. Dr. Ellis and I talked about it in my next session. I admitted I still loved her, or at least the version of her I'd married. He said that was okay, that love and anger could coexist, but I needed to decide what I could live with. Could I ever trust her again? I didn't think so. I met with Tom, my lawyer, to go over the divorce papers. He drafted a petition, no fault. Since Colorado didn't require me to air our dirty laundry in court, we'd split our savings evenly, and I'd keep the apartment and Buddy. Ashley could have her car and whatever was in storage. It sounded simple, but signing the papers felt like cutting off a limb. I hadn't told her yet. I wasn't ready for that fight. Tom said I'd need to serve her the papers soon, and I dreaded it. Would she beg again? Would I waver? I didn't want to, but the thought of her crying still twisted something in me. My parents came to visit, driving down from their place near Denver. Mom brought a casserole, like food could fix a broken heart, and Dad helped me fix a leaky faucet in the kitchen. They didn't push me to talk, but over dinner, Mom asked what I wanted now. I didn't have an answer, just to feel normal again. I said finally. Dad nodded, like he understood, and told me about a buddy of his who'd rebuild his life after a bad divorce. You're young, Ryan, he said. You've got time. It was the first time I let myself think about a future without Ashley, and it scared me as much as it freed me. Therapy was starting to make sense. Dr. Ellis had me talk about the deployment more, not just Ashley. I told him about a night when our convoy got hit by an IED. Nobody died, but it was close. I'd buried that fear, focused on fixing the trucks. But it was still there, tangled up with Ashley's betrayal. He said trauma compounds, that the shock of coming home to her cheating was like another explosion. I started noticing things, how I'd flinch at loud noises, how I'd check the locks twice before bed. I wasn't just angry at Ashley, I was angry at myself for not seeing it coming, for thinking I could control anything. I started running longer with Buddy, pushing myself until my lungs burned. It was like I was trying to outrun the pain. One morning, I passed the bookstore where Ashley worked. I didn't go in, but I wondered if she was there, if Derek was. The thought made me sick, but I kept running. Journaling was my other outlet, pages of raw thoughts, from hating her to missing her to hating myself for missing her. I wrote about the deployment, the pride I felt in my work, the guilt for not being enough for her. Slowly, I started writing about what I could control, my job, my health, my friends. It wasn't much, but it was a start. I wasn't ready to forgive Ashley, and I didn't know if I ever would be, but I was tired of letting her betrayal define me. A month after walking in on Ashley and Derek, I was starting to find a rhythm, or at least something close to it. The apartment felt less like a crime scene now, with new curtains and a cheap rug to cover the ghosts of our old life. Buddy was my constant, his tail wagging every time I grabbed his leash or tossed him a treat. Work kept me sane. Fixing engines, joking with the squad, feeling useful. Josh and Carter were relentless, dragging me to a local fair one weekend where we ate too many corn dogs and laughed at Carter's terrible aim in a dart game. For a few hours, I forgot about Ashley, but the pain was always there, waiting to creep back in when I was alone. I finally told Ashley about the divorce papers. I didn't want to see her, so I emailed her, short and to the point. I was filing, and she'd get the papers soon. Her response came fast, another long plea, saying she was in therapy, that she'd ended things with Derek, that she wanted to fight for us. She asked to meet, said she'd sign whatever I wanted if we could just talk first. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We met at a park near the base, neutral ground. She looked tired, her hair pulled back, no makeup, like she wasn't trying to hide anymore. She apologized again, tears streaming, and said she'd been lost without me, that Derek was a mistake she'd regret forever. I listened, but I felt distant, like I was watching someone else's life. I told her I couldn't trust her again, that every letter she'd sent was tainted now. She nodded, wiping her eyes, and said she understood, even if it hurt. I still love you, Ryan, she whispered. I didn't say it back. I couldn't. I handed her the lawyer's contact info and told her to expect the papers. She didn't fight it, just hugged herself and said she'd sign. Walking away, I felt lighter but also hollow, like I'd lost something I'd never get back. Dr. Ellis said that was normal. Divorce is a death, even if it's the right choice. He had me focus on what I could control: my health, my job, my future. My squad stepped up in ways I didn't expect. Martinez invited me to his place for a barbecue, where his wife and kids treated me like family. It was bittersweet, seeing what I'd wanted with Ashley, but it reminded me life went on. Carter and Josh started a bet on who could run faster with me and Buddy, turning our morning jogs into a competition. It was stupid, but it made me laugh, something I hadn't done much lately. I was opening up more in therapy too, talking about the deployment's toll, how I'd pushed down fear to keep the trucks running, how Ashley's betrayal felt like a failure I couldn't fix. Dr. Ellis said I was showing signs of PTSD, not just from combat, but from the shock of coming home to her cheating. He gave me exercises to manage the anxiety, like breathing techniques for when I'd wake up at 3 a.m., heart pounding. I started rebuilding in small ways. I signed up for a community college class on automotive design, something I'd always wanted to try. It was online, so I could do it after work, sketching ideas for better engines. It gave me something to look forward to, a piece of myself that wasn't tied to Ashley. I also started volunteering at a local animal shelter with Buddy, walking dogs for people who couldn't. It felt good to help, to focus on something outside my own mess. My parents called every few days, checking in, and Mom sent me a care package with cookies and a photo of us from my high school graduation. I put it on the fridge, a reminder I wasn't alone. But nights were still hard. I'd lie awake, wondering if I could have done something different, called more, come home sooner. I knew it was irrational, that her choice was hers, but the doubt lingered. Journaling helped me sort it out, pages of anger giving way to plans, a new apartment, maybe a trip somewhere far from Colorado. I wasn't healed, not by a long shot, but I was starting to see a path forward, one where Ashley's betrayal wasn't the end of my story. 3 months after finding Ashley with Derek, I was starting to feel like a person again, not just a walking wound. The divorce papers were signed. Ashley didn't fight it, just sent them back through her lawyer with a short note. I'm sorry, Ryan. I hope you find happiness. I didn't know what to do with that. Part of me wanted to hate her forever, but hate was heavy, and I was tired of carrying it. I moved to a new apartment, a smaller place closer to the base, with a balcony where Buddy could sunbathe. It wasn't home yet, but it was mine, free of her shadow. I'd sold our old couch, bought a new bed, and hung up some posters from my college days. Buddy seemed to like the change, sprawling across the new rug like he owned it. Work was my backbone. I'd been promoted to lead mechanic on my shift, which meant more responsibility and less time to dwell. My squad was still there, checking in without making it obvious. Josh and Carter dragged me to a rock concert one weekend. Some local band with too much bass. But we shouted along and laughed until my sides hurt. Martinez had me over for dinner again, his kids showing me their Lego creations. It felt like family, something I hadn't realized I needed so badly. I was still in therapy, seeing Dr. Ellis every week. We talked less about Ashley now and more about me, what I wanted, who I was without her. I told him about the deployment, the close calls I'd buried, the guilt I felt for not being enough for her. He said guilt was a liar, that her choices weren't my fault. I was starting to believe him. The community college class was a bright spot. I'd always loved designing things, and the automotive course let me play with ideas for better engines, sketching late into the night. It gave me purpose, something to build toward. The shelter volunteering was another anchor, walking dogs, cleaning kennels, seeing their tails wag when I showed up. One mutt, a scrappy terrier named Scout, reminded me of Buddy, and I started thinking about adopting him. It felt like a step, like I was ready to let new things into my life. My parents visited again, and Mom cried when she saw my new place, not out of sadness but pride. "You're doing it, Ryan," she said. Dad just nodded, but his hug said enough. I still had bad days, a song on the radio, a couple holding hands at the grocery store. It could hit me out of nowhere. The loss of what Ashley and I had. I didn't miss her, not exactly, but I missed the idea of us, the future we'd planned. Dr. Ellis said that was grief, not just for her, but for the life I'd imagined. I journaled through it, filling notebooks with thoughts I couldn't say out loud. I wrote about the deployment's weight, how I'd carried her letters like armor, how finding her with Derek shattered that. But I also wrote about hope, small things, like a sunrise on my runs with Buddy, or the way Scout at the shelter would nudge my hand. I was learning to notice the good again. I heard through a mutual friend that Ashley had moved to Denver, working at a new bookstore. She was single, supposedly, trying to find herself. I didn't care, or at least I told myself I didn't. I blocked her number, deleted her emails, and thrown out the last of her letters. The divorce was final, our savings split. Buddy officially mine. I was single too. But I wasn't looking for anyone. I needed to know who I was first. Without the Army or Ashley defining me, I started planning a trip, maybe to the Grand Canyon, just me and Buddy. I wanted to stand somewhere vast and feel small, but in a good way. For the first time, I could imagine a life that wasn't about fixing what broke, but building something new. It wasn't easy, and I wasn't whole yet, but I was moving forward, one step at a time, and that was enough for now.